I call the Community Development Commission to order at 12. Will the staff conduct a roll call, please?
Chair Stubbs.
Present.
Commissioner Johnson second.
Here.
Commissioner Tim.
Here.
Commissioner Cole.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Bailey.
Present.
Commissioner Green.
Here.
Commissioner Dean.
Here.
And Commissioner Arroyo.
Okay, the first agenda item is the approval of the September 16th minutes. Do we have any corrections to the minutes? Okay,
I move to approve as written.
I second.
any opposed?
You need to ask.
Thank you.
Yeah, for all in favor.
All those in favor of the approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? And the motion passes. All right, I'll turn it over to the staff for the scheduled business for the day. Thank you.
Great. So as you can see, we have agency consultations today. Kind of the focus of these agencies are those that serve people that are homeless in Albany. And so they'll kind of be speaking on what services they provide, what needs they see, and any gaps or challenges that are faced by our residents who are experiencing homelessness so that we can better understand that issue in Albany. So I will start with Jessica Becker with Albany Helping Hands. If you'd like to.
Okay, good afternoon. A brief overview of our services. Albany Helping Hands provides emergency shelter, meals, and essential supportive services for our residents. Our services include shelter and basic needs, beds, meals, clothing, and hygiene supplies, case management, personalized plans to support residents in finding permanent housing, employment, and necessary resources, mental health and recovery support. While we offer some external referrals, there is a critical need to enhance these services on site. Our current total shelter capacity. Our shelter has a capacity of 120, which includes our shelter, the surrounding homes, and our home for women and children. Our men's side of the dorm has 60 beds and is regularly at capacity. Our women's side holds 34 beds. We are regularly full on the bottom bunks and consistently have to turn women away due to their inability to get into top bunks because of various medical issues. Some of the types of housing that I see most needed, the most urgent housing needs for our residents and the broader low and moderate income Albany community include supportive housing for individuals transitioning from shelter to independent living who require ongoing mental health and addiction recovery support, transitional housing. Residents need a stable environment while working toward permanent housing and permanent solutions. Single bedroom units for individuals who are ready to live independently but cannot afford market rate rentals. And disability accessible housing. Given the number of residents with physical and mental health challenges, this is a significant need. Some of the challenges in existing homelessness. Residents face several barriers to securing stable housing, including affordability. Many residents have low or no income, making it difficult to afford rental rates, even for basic units. And certain systems require individuals to make 3 times the rent to qualify. Mental health and trauma. Many residents carry deep emotional and psychological scars from past traumas, making it challenging to engage in employment or housing processes without consistent mental health support. Landlord hesitation. Past evictions, criminal records, and poor credit history often lead to landlords denying rental applications. Some additional challenges, lack of access to consistent mental health care. Many have experienced significant trauma, as I said before, and need on-site counseling and therapeutic services to begin healing. Employment barriers, limited work history, legal issues, and lack of skills or certifications, which create hurdles in securing stable jobs. Healthcare gaps. Many residents lack access to essential medical, dental, and addiction recovery services. Transportation. Without reliable transportation, it is difficult for residents to attend job interviews, medical appointments, or house viewings. Disability income is insufficient to survive. Services, programs, and resources that are most needed. So to better serve our residents, we urgently need on-site mental health counseling. Addressing trauma and mental health is foundational for sustainable progress in other areas like employment and housing. Job training programs, expanding vocational training and life skills development to enhance employment prospects. Legal assistance, helping residents resolve identification issues, expunge criminal records, or address prior evictions. Programs and projects that we would love to do or move forward with additional funding. We would pursue our Pathway to Independent program, which is designed to foster resident accountability and self-sufficiency, through structured goal setting. It involves skill building, people skills, budgeting, money management, and so much more. A full-time mental health counselor, on-site therapy, and trauma-informed care would significantly enhance resident recovery and stability. Expanded transitional housing, creating safe, affordable spaces to live while offering intensive case management, health programs, integrating alternative therapy options such as mindfulness, self-awareness, and therapies to support emotional well-being. And of course, additional full-time staff we would desperately need.
Thank you so much. Do we
Are
have,
there any questions?
can you stay up for a couple questions? Thank you. Commissioner Davis?
Thank you. I was going to ask, how many people do you service? Do you keep like a population? Do you service with your programs? Do you keep track of that?
So we have a total of 120. The men is, I believe, 60, and we're at capacity for the men's dorms. Women, I think, is about almost at capacity right now. It holds about 34 beds. But as I mentioned earlier, for some reason, the women that come in, it's really hard. We have to turn them away because of their disabilities, and they can't get into a top bunk.
Sure. Some of your services are for people, though, who aren't in shelters, right? Aren't they auxiliary services for people who just drop in and that sort of stuff?
So we don't, like, as far as meals are concerned, we don't serve non-residents.
Oh, gotcha.
That,
Okay.
yeah, I think about a year
Okay.
ago that
Okay.
stopped.
And do you measure like how many people move up the system? Like, do you have like any sorts of milestones, goals that you look at for that sort of thing?
That's a great question. I can look into that and see if we have done that in the past. At this point, I'm not aware of that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Question, you mentioned the women could not get into the top bunk. So is there an able-bodied person that can move up to a top bunk?
Yes, we do that. We try that all the time. If someone happens to be in a bottom bunk and they're able-bodied and we see someone coming in that cannot do a top bunk, sorry, but we have to move you up. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I have a question, a couple questions. So the capacities that you talked about, can they be temporarily increased, for example, during cold snaps when there are needs for warming centers and things like that?
At this point, we are going through, I guess, what I've considered growing pains. We have some room upstairs, but again, getting the majority of our residents to be able to go up there would be a huge challenge. So we are looking into more rooms somewhere, somehow for that.
And then one thing that I think was mentioned, I've heard mentioned some time ago, is the need for some kind of temporary shelter for like sexual offenders because they have specific requirements. Is that something that has been looked at all?
Yeah, that is actually one of the populations we serve, and we contract with parole and probation. So when they're released from jail or prison, we have a contract and we have a house designated for them. And so they have a place to stay because that's one of the hardest for them to be housed. So we specifically have a house geared for that.
Do you know how many people it can hold?
The house, I believe 6.
Okay, thank you.
Pardon me? Yeah, for those, yes.
What's the average length of stay you keep a resident?
That is,
Just a ballpark.
okay, so it's really hard to nail that one down. I mean, we do have some people there for years. I believe our longest resident stay right now is like 7 years, which we're trying to go our pathway to independence so we can move them forward into not shelter living. Other cases that have been more recent, could be a week, could be a night. It really varies.
I don't know if this is the same question Mr. Davis asked, but along those lines, what percentage would you say you're having like success stories with, or people that come in and then are able to transition, like percentage wise, maybe?
That is something we want to move towards. Right now, I find it pretty rare to have someone moving forward. I think the demographics there have changed in the last couple of years, and we're seeing a lot more senior people with disabilities to where they cannot work. And so that's really hard because we want them to be safe in a place where they have shelter, yet moving them forward would look completely differently than someone who's, maybe in their 20s and is completely able to obtain employment. So.
Yeah, I think, we want to see like, what does a success rate look like? But I think it's also important to remember that the lane that you're staying in is to be a shelter, a safe shelter.
Yeah.
Historically, not necessarily in the life coaching piece of transitioning them forward. And so I want to commend what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
In staying in your lane of being a safe shelter. And then hopefully partnering with, you can't be everything to everybody, but partnering with other resources for people that are ready for that next step. But just meals, a warm place to sleep, somewhere they can stay safe, not get their things stolen. That is successful.
Thank you.
Yeah, even if you're not maybe having numbers of people moving on. That's our hope as a city. Like, how can we move people back into functioning as a society, into society? But there's different levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question. Could you briefly just describe the addiction and mental health services that you provide? Are these staff members?
So no, right now, as far as mental health services, we have Lynn County Mental Health, their new mobile unit coming in once a week, and we have really tried to encourage people to go in there. We have seen more recently, which is wonderful, but there is such a large need there. And so that would be a huge asset to have in our staff. And recovery, we have Ideal Options that is in our parking lot. Actually, if you come in, go all the way down our older parking lot and you'll see their sign on the left. And they're a treatment facility.
Thank you.
Question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but as I recall, there were some issues with the federal government and your organizational structure or something in the recent past. Could you talk about that a little bit and where it is today?
So
he is referencing the DOJ investigation and just where the status is on that.
Thank you. So that was before my tenure here. That was a report they had sent out. I have seen the report, and that is now, I guess, what they refer to as past. And so one of our goals is moving forward in the utmost ethical, proper way to really be a pillar in our community.
And if there are more questions about that, maybe that's something that I can get those questions and ask you at another time, because today we're really just focused kind of on the needs. And so I want to make sure we've got time for other folks to talk about what their agencies are doing on these issues. So if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to move us on to our next presenter, and happy to follow up on any other additional questions that the commission has, just let me know and I can shoot you an email or give you a call. And yeah, all right. Thank you so much. So now I'm going to turn it over to Brandy Flagman. Flagman? Flagman. Okay, I should have gone with my gut.
Hello, I'm presenting on behalf of my supervisor who is away on a family emergency. So I kind of collected responses from everyone on our team at the FACT program to provide to you guys. So hopefully I can answer all the questions you have. The FACT program works with McKinney-Vento students in the district. Those are students who are experiencing housing instability. We assist them with accessing basic needs and removing any barriers that they have to education. That might include food, clothing, hygiene supplies, housing, school supplies, medical care, transportation to school. So far this year, we have identified 230 McKinney-Vento students in the school district. And at the end of last year, we had identified 457.
One moment, can you say what you're, what's that phrase you're saying? What students?
McKinney-Vento. So those are homeless students in our district. So McKinney-Vento is a federal program that ensures that students with housing instability receive the same education as any other student, basically, just protecting the rights of those students.
Yeah. Making,
McKinney-Vento.
is that
McKinney-Vento. Yes.
McKinney-Vento Latin? No.
I don't know.
Okay. Please explain, somebody.
It's the name of the act that enabled that,
Yeah.
that ensures that students that are experiencing homelessness, and you can add more to that, but are still able to go to the same schools that they went to before, that had the resources to be successful in those schools,
Yeah.
et cetera. So McKinney-Vento, I think, is the name of the act, and that's why they're called McKinney-Vento students.
I should know about this, so I'm going to look it up and listen to you.
We are
I'll
happy
look
to
it up
give you
later.
guys training on that or a presentation too if
Yeah.
you want more information about that.
Thank you. Continue.
Yeah. So what our team has identified that is most needed as far as housing goes for students and families that we serve is 2 to 4 bedroom units, affordable and subsidized housing, and transitional and supportive housing options for those people that are transitioning out of homelessness. As we know, it may take years for them to actually get on their feet and become stable. Some challenges that we've seen families are facing when they're trying to exit houselessness are prior evictions and a poor rental history, poor credit, criminal records, if they're a felon and maybe can't rent in certain areas, maintaining employment during transition from homelessness, lack of transportation. Public transportation has been a huge one that makes it difficult for our families to access resources. Family shelters or family rooms within shelters is a big one, or families not feeling safe to take their students or children to the shelter. Lack of childcare. A lot of times single parent families don't have childcare needed so that they can go out and work or look for housing, things like that. Deposit and first month rent, the very long Section 8 wait list, and the rental prices are all reasons we've seen for people being facing houselessness. Other challenges that we've seen aside from housing are the lack of transportation, like I mentioned, lack of education, lack of childcare, and just overall lack of support, maybe like a peer support or community to kind of help them navigate different systems and processes and things like that. I think probably a lot of people recognize that a person's executive functioning skills are incredibly affected by houselessness, and they're often in survival mode. So just making sure that they have the supports wrapped around them that they need to navigate the systems. Let's see. Utility assistance is something else that came up. That's something that we're frequently asked to help families with. Water bills is one thing that comes up frequently. And one of my coworkers had mentioned maybe easier accessibility to the water discount program, as we were seeing a lot of families getting their water shut off, requesting help from us, and we don't really have the resources or the funding to help them with that. Other projects and programs that we thought might be useful, things that we could be involved with would be tutoring and mentoring. That's something that we really see is lacking for our students, as well as we would always love to expand our resource closet that we have for our students and provide some kind of resource center where students can shower and have clean clothing and do laundry or, whatever they need to do. And other things that we just see in the community are more mental health supports, transitional housing with intensive case management or some kind of wraparound support, and the public transportation. That's, I think, pretty much sums up what our program has identified as needs in our community.
Thank you so much. We'll just open it up for a few minutes for any questions.
What form does your housing assistance take? Do you provide financial vouchers, or how do you currently provide that type of service to families with students?
Yeah, so we assist families and students with accessing the resources that the community already has as far as housing goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have your independent source
We
of
do not,
funding
no.
for that sort of thing. Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Any further questions?
Question, in your observation, do most of the students that you, or I should say, what percentage of the students that you serve have a cell phone and access to a calling plan?
Very few of them. And even less now. I think there was like an affordable connectivity program that used to be available and it's not available now. I haven't gotten myself up to speed with what is available or if anything has taken its place, but we frequently have students who don't have any way of communicating, or families, which makes it difficult for them to stay in contact with housing navigators or whoever it is that they're working with. But we also have unaccompanied students, teenagers who often aren't living with their parents. Jackson Street will talk to you guys more about them, I'm sure, but they often don't have any form of communication, which is a big safety concern for them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When you mentioned easier accessibility to discount towards a water utility bill, have you walked anyone through that where you would know what that barrier is?
No, I personally have not, but I know that some of my coworkers have. I'm happy to have them connect with you if you.
I think that'd be really important for us to know.
Yeah.
If there is consistent barrier to getting that discount or to getting access to that application.
So Community Services Consortium manages the program on behalf of the City of Albany. So their staff probably are aware of some of the barriers that are being faced by some of the residents. So whether it's income, because it's an income-based program.
Okay, thank you so much.
So I will now turn it over to Carol Davies with the Community Outreach Assistance Team through Creating Housing.
Good afternoon. So I am part of Creating Housing Coalition, and I'm the program director for COAT, which is Community Outreach Assistance Team. We are, excuse me, we're a street outreach program, but we are much more than a street outreach program. So we do what traditional street outreach programs do, where we hand out food and supplies and inform people of resources. But one of the most important things that we do is we work really hard to build connections with people. We go out into the community 4 days a week. We see the same people over and over again. They get to know us. They get to trust us. and building those relationships, we can then be in a better position to offer assistance and have them accept it. The other really important piece of our work is we offer case management and at times intensive case management. So if somebody will come in and they need to get housing, they have no resources right now, so we need to get them IDs. We need to try to get them a source of income. We need to get them signed up for low-income housing vouchers. It just runs the gamut from the very beginning stages all the way to when we get them into housing. Once we get them into housing, then we offer continued case management so that they can successfully stay in housing. So that's another really important piece. We have a number of people that we're working with who have been with us since the program started. They continue to face challenges, and we work on addressing those challenges so that they're able to live independently and, as I said, successfully. So that's a little bit about what COAT does. I think you're going to see a recurring theme here among all of the agencies as far as things that are missing, the gaps. I am echoing what the past two presenters have said. We need supported housing for clients who have mental health challenges. That is something that's severely lacking. We have a number of people that we're working with who have mental health challenges, and they're too severe for them to be able to live independently, but not severe enough for them to be able to get into adult foster homes or any other type of supported housing like that. So that is one huge gap that we have. Another big gap, and I know I've mentioned this in past meetings, is neither of the shelters accept pets. I applaud Chance for starting a pet program. However, we do still need shelters that will take pets, because oftentimes the people that we're working with, these pets are their lifeline, and they're the only thing that they have left to hold on to. And the thought of giving them away so that they can get shelter is unacceptable. So if we had programs of shelters that took pets, I think that would be super helpful. Another issue that I see a lot of is the HUD voucher rates. They are artificially low, especially for Lynn County. Lynn County's apartment rates are equal to Benton County's. However, it's usually between $150 to $200 a month less for the HUD vouchers. So if somebody wants to get an apartment in Lynn County, it's going to be much more challenging for them than if they moved on to Benton County. And I realize that's a federal issue more than a local issue, but an issue nonetheless. Another gap that I see is having housing for people who have evictions, criminal records, or high debt load. There are some debt programs in Lynn County. I know that one of them, the Rent Well program, which is administered by CSC, is extremely hard to get into. But that's the one that landlords usually look most favorably upon. There are two others. There's one through Senior and Disability Services and another through Dev Northwest. But I think the gold standard is the Rent Well program. Super hard to get people into the program just because of the need. Another issue is transitional housing for people with medical needs and for families. This is an enormous need. The transitional housing programs that we have here aren't nearly enough to cover the number of people who are in need of housing. So many people living in their vehicles and have very serious health needs and are unable to address them because of their being in the confines of a small vehicle. The last one that I have here is a lack of phone assistance, which was also mentioned. There used to be a federal program. It stopped. Really difficult now. I will say Crossroads Communities in Lebanon has really stepped up. They're offering a phone lending program, and we are really happy to say that we are participating in that program where we lend out a phone for free. If a person wants to purchase the phone and a plan, it's $35 a month. So it's a great program. And I'm hoping that it's going to start addressing the needs. For things that I'd like to see, all of these lack ofs that I just mentioned, I would love to see implemented. I think that if we were able to get those voucher rates increased, we'd see a lot more people that we're able to place into housing. If we had that transitional housing piece for people with medical needs and with families, we'd have a lot fewer people who are in ill health or people with very young children living in their vehicles. I just want to point out the number of families that I'm seeing who are living in their vehicles with infants. If you can imagine that, try living in your vehicle with an infant. It's almost an impossible situation. So, as I said, if we can implement some of these needs, I think that we'll be doing so much better as a community. And I'd like to open it up to questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, no problem. I have a lot of questions, but I'll just do a couple. You mentioned it's really difficult to get into the rent well program. What exactly is the difficulty? Is it not having enough class space?
So it's done online, so I don't think the class space is an issue. However, I don't know if they have a limit.
Mm-hmm.
They may have a limit. I think the biggest problem that both we as an organization and the clients that we serve are having is being able to connect with the person that is running the Rent Well program. You can make 10 phone calls, and then if you're lucky, you'll be able to reach her. So just that whole communication piece,
Mm-hmm.
I think, is the most difficult part of it.
Young Roots, they also just opened up a Rent Well program. Is that correct? Have you heard about that?
I have not.
Does anyone know details?
I'd have to go back and look at some of the.
Yeah, they
information
just got
provided.
certified,
Yeah.
and they have a location by Rada Paint. And
It's been over, yeah, it's been a year.
be serving?
no, they're certified just like whoever it is
I
doing
can,
the other one.
I can follow up with
Mhm,
Andrea and see
mhm.
if they have capacity to have participants in that program beyond just their own
Mhm.
clients. So I think that's a question, and that would definitely probably be a
Yes.
question for you to, like,
Yep.
that you'd want answered, Carol.
Great.
So
They've trained and licensed their
yeah,
staff
or-
to
and
do that.
what their
So
capacity is for that.
just so you know,
Good to know.
that is new. as
Great,
well.
thank you for that.
And then when you talk about transitional housing for medical, explain what would that look like in a practical setting for someone to be successful?
Oh my gosh, my absolute dream would be some type of a motel type setting that also has medical faculty on staff. That would be my dream. However, I will say again that Chance does a wonderful job with the number of rooms that they do have by getting people with fragile medical needs housed temporarily.
Whoever else has questions, I have a couple more after we
Oh,
go.
go ahead. You want to keep going?
No, please.
Oh, question I was going to ask, specific to thinking about this city camping situation. When that was created, did that make your job easier as an organization or did it make it harder? That's the first question. And the follow-up question to that is, what has changed since the dispersal of that facility and those individuals?
So to answer your first question, both.
Sure.
The influx of people that we were serving inundated us for quite a while. And it did take a while for us to be able to help all of the people that were willing to accept help. It was easier in that everybody was in a central location, so it was much easier for us to find them. And the downside of Marvin's Garden closing is it's so much more difficult to find the people who were in Marvin's Garden that we had already built relationships with, that we were working on getting them to the point where they were ready to accept services. And now they're dispersed far and wide. And they, in many cases, are so far into the woods that time-wise, we can't go out there to find them just because it would take so long to get out there. Oh, that would be another need. So I know Emma had mentioned once about a four-wheeler or a three-wheeler or something for us to be able to take out there. That would be wonderful, and it would certainly cut down on our time. I know that's a pipe dream for us at this point, but being able to access people in a more timely manner, I think would be very helpful.
I can get you a four-wheeler. I'll talk to you.
Awesome.
I'll talk to you afterwards. Okay. Anyone else have questions?
I had a couple
Yeah.
questions. Yeah. So you mentioned the ability to get people telephones, and that there was, because some of the support services for that have gone away, but another group, I don't remember the name, had stepped up. How many of the people you see are able to take advantage of that?
Quite a few of them. We've had the phones now for just a couple of weeks, and we've given away 5 of them so far. The downside to them is they're flip phones, so there's no internet access. They're just the very basic phone. But we anticipate a much greater need, so we'll be getting more from Crossroads program.
Crossroads. Okay. And then a follow-up, since they don't have any kind of a computer or web access, for the people who are trying to do things like the Rent Well program, is that a barrier for them that it's done online then?
It absolutely is a barrier. However, Gretchen from the Rent Well program has told me that she would be willing to give out workbooks for people who aren't able to access it online.
Okay, thank you.
What supplies would you say that you are mainly handing out to people in cars and out in their tents?
We hand out, last year we handed out close to 11,000 pounds of food. I'm sorry, not 11,000 pounds, 11,000 meals to people. That was last year. We're on track for at least that this year. So food is a really big thing that we hand out. And we also hand out hygiene kits. That is also a big need. Also for people living in their vehicles, sleeping bags or warm blankets. That's huge as well. So those are probably the biggest needs for people living in their vehicles. When they're out camping, that's a different story. They need everything. They need the tents and they need the tarps and something hopefully to elevate them off the ground so the wet and cold isn't seeping into the tent. And tents are much more difficult to obtain as well because there are a lot of grants that don't allow for tents. So another big thing that we hand out both cars and camping is coats and hats and scarves and gloves. I think that we probably spent most of our funding on those items last year just to try to keep people warm.
Mm-hmm.
So how many people do you think if in total live in a tent or in the cars? How many?
So last year, 2023, we served 850 individual people. This year, we have added an additional 500. So that's 1,350 right there that are unduplicated that we have served within the past year and a half.
So in the last year and a half, you have documented 1,300 different individual names.
Yes.
Carol, that's the Lynn County Rest Stop? I mean, that is beyond Albany residents. It's just who you're serving in the locations you go to.
It is more than just Albany residents, but I would say the majority of them are Albany residents.
Is one quick following question. So the folks who are camping or living in their vehicles obviously produce a fair amount of waste that has a tendency to sit in place where they are at. Does anybody coordinate with the city, with the parks, or the city, whoever's in charge of cleaning up, public spaces, so that that stuff can get cleaned up? Because I imagine that's a health issue, rats, et cetera, et cetera. Because I was just down in a park yesterday where some folks are camping, and there was a lot of refuse and rats. So
I think Parks and Rec does a fairly good job of cleaning up. I know they have a really limited budget.
yeah.
And I think the main issue is lack of funding. We had talked at one point about being able to put a dumpster at the far end of Simpson Park or Talking Waters. The major issue was funding, and then the second issue was Parks and Rec was like, I don't think we want to get involved in that. So, yeah.
I think the users of the parks might fund those for those folks,
And Millersburg actually owns a lot of that land. So there were some other issues between which jurisdiction would be responsible. So,
Yeah, for the Talking Waters section, yes.
All right. I just, in the interest of time, thank you, Carol. I appreciate all the good information. I'm going to turn it over to Emma Dean now, Commissioner Dean.
Hello, Commissioner Dean. Thank you for coming.
It got real loud in our day room, and I was like, there's no way I can present from my office right now. So I'm thankful I got to listen to everybody share. I appreciate what everyone's doing. And I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing. More people, new people. A couple of years ago, I could have drove through town with a couple of my staff and we could have named everyone that was experiencing houselessness and who we are serving. And there are new people almost daily that are on the streets experiencing homelessness, accessing services. And one of the things, substance use disorder and mental health is a huge crisis right now. And the work that a majority of us are doing is attempting to stabilize people before we can even begin to look at housing. Then when we get to the housing piece, it's also not readily available. And so people are getting stuck in the sheltering system because we can't find the next step. I know for us, we're working to increase how we're tracking our data. We want to see those numbers. How long have we worked with people? What things have we attempted? When did they move into housing? How long have they been there? I don't have those numbers for you right now, but I will tell you it is a long process. We have people with no ID, no medical insurance, like you can't get mental health, you can't see primary care, with lots of trauma, and we're starting at that step while people are outside trying to survive and stay alive. So it's a good question. I want to know the numbers as well. What I know is it's a really long process, and when we get there, that next step is not available. And so I know for us, we're working to be able to figure out how do we track that and be able to provide that data. So a little bit about Chance. We're in Len, Benton, and Lincoln counties. Lynn County is our biggest office space service provider, specifically in Albany. We have our shelter and our downtown office. So we're providing peer support, which is staff with lived experience coming alongside people in their journey and offering support and helping people navigate the different systems that are in place. We have a Prime Plus grant, which allows us to purchase items to provide to people. So tents, tarps, coats, things like that, socks. I stand on two different sides of that. I'm a real big believer in ensuring that people are going to stay alive throughout the night until we can connect with them again. And while we're working to find the next step, I also don't want to see the pile up in our community. I rode the train with my husband a couple years ago to Seattle and just sobbed and was like taking notes of like, what do we do different in our town? And I feel responsible because of the work that I do, while also believing we got to keep people alive long enough to get help. So some different ways that we do that is we do a small amount of outreach. We'll go out to camps. We'll go out if we get called by a community member that's concerned. We'll clean up while we're there. We'll support people in cleanup. The other thing we have at our shelter and our office is laundry and showers. So when we're handing items out to people, if they come back the next day and they're like, hey, I need a coat. Nope. Let us wash and dry. The other thing, we live in Oregon, it gets wet. So we're also using that as a coaching moment of keep it, take care of it, bring it back, let us wash and dry it for you. So we're not just handing out the same item over and over again, and all the other ones have been left on our sidewalks. Right now in our Albany office, we see 60 to 90 people a day. I would say as we're moving into our current fall and winter, we'll probably sit at about 80 to 90 different individuals a day coming in for services. We're providing meals at our shelter, 3 meals every day, at our office, Monday through Friday, breakfast and lunch. I'm gonna keep bellies full. We also think it's a great way to be able to connect with people. We have a dental clinic that runs out of our office, which is huge and amazing. It's really hard to get access to dental care. And if you've ever had a toothache, you know how painful that is. So we're excited to offer that. We're working with Samaritan to try to get medical back in our building where we can have a doctor on site at least once a month and create direct access for people. We have an adult education program. We will transport anybody anywhere in the state of Oregon to detox pretty much anytime. I've had detox centers say, bring them in at 8 o'clock, and I have staff show up, pick them up, take them to detox. When that person is leaving detox, we will pick them up and connect them to the next step. We've got our shelter, which we offer a high barrier setting, a low barrier, family dorms, and emergency settings. We have a crisis team. It's not huge. We want to expand that. So we'll go out again. APD can call us. I'll send staff out to meet with people with APD. They can bring people to the shelter or our office to connect with a peer support. We also have community members that will call or come into our offices and say, hey, I saw someone and I'm concerned. And we'll go out and check in on them. We've got the mental health crisis bus that will come to our shelter once a week and connect with people. We also have Samaritan's medical bus that comes once a month to our shelter, and we're working to get them also at our Albany office. We have our pet program, which we're developing right now to help fund people that need to have either their animal fixed or vaccines or flea treatment in order to access shelter, or helping them get letters from medical providers. We're also looking at how do we board animals while somebody goes to detox. That's another thing we see is somebody is ready for detox, but they have a pet and they don't have an option for their pet, and so they will not go. So we're trying to tackle that one as well. Right now, our shelter capacity, so our low barrier, which is come as you are, active substance abuse disorder and a mental health crisis, whatever's going on, you're welcome. Come stay with us and be dry and warm and cared for. There are some rules with that, right? Like, please don't use on our property, in our building, and be safe. So that is 42 beds. It's full. And we are not even to our coldest weather yet, which makes us nervous. We're happy that people are inside, but we're nervous that those beds are already full. So I know our staff are working to try and transition people out of that space and into our high barrier space, which is clean and sober, where we have more beds. So right now, 32 out of 70 high barrier beds are open. We have 38 full high barrier beds across our men's and women's dorm. We have 5 family rooms, and we have 1 available right now. They go quick. I think that we are, at least in Albany, if not all of Lynn County, the only place that has family shelter space available. We also have a respite building that just opened, which is 5 rooms, and we're partnering with Samaritan, so individuals that are unhoused, that just had surgery or need surgery or are going through dialysis or chemo. They come and stay in that space in a private room. They're getting support from Samaritan, and a case manager on our end is working as well. And when that time is up with Samaritan, we're not just exiting them back out to the streets. Another huge thing, almost all of our bunks that are open are top bunks, which I think has been shared. That is hard for the individuals that we are serving to access those, and we will move people around as we can to create more space. A need that, so talking about, is there more need than chance has capacity to address? So low barrier. I mean, we have 42 low barrier beds and they are full. We can get really creative with space, but we need to have appropriate space and staffing. So we're at capacity there, and it is very clear that we need more low barrier beds in our town so that we can get people to the starting line and starting to stabilize as we move them through the shelter system. Warming and cooling center, emergency shelter, that's a huge need. We will open up as much space as we can in our building outside of our dorms when it's cold and wet, and let people come in. We have a bigger need. We're not able to meet that need for everyone within our community. Also, medically fragile people. We see so many people that are medically fragile. They are people that we cannot care for in a shelter setting, but if we do not take them in, we will come to work and they will be dead on our sidewalk. That is the reality of the situation that we are experiencing. And so we are taking in people that exceed our level of care and trying to get care into the shelters for those individuals. So housing that is most needed, again, supportive housing, which means people that have been chronically unhoused that are getting into housing, wrapping them up with peer support and supportive services. Hey, your front porch needs to be picked up. Your mailbox is overflowing. Trying to offer them support to successfully stay in housing while also providing them with people to be around is really important and a huge need. Also, individuals that are developmentally delayed with severe mental health need support, and we don't have that right now. So some people were getting into housing and they're evicted in a couple of months, and we're having to start the process all over. We need more care facility space where people can go and be safe and cared for. Affordable rentals for single individuals and families. We love the work that Helping Hands is doing, providing shelter for individuals with sex offenses. There needs to be a next step. I would assume that at Helping Hands, they're also getting stuck in that shelter setting. So challenges, again, affordable housing, support in housing, and appropriate housing with the support that is needed. Aside from housing, we need mental health support. If we had mental health support for people, a mass amount of this would change. We can't access mental health for people. It's come see us in 30 days. You miss an appointment, come see us in 2 weeks. Meds are out. In a shelter setting, we are doing everything we can to safely keep someone in shelter while trying to access the support they need. Mental health is huge. Access to detox is a need that we're working on, and CNA support in shelter, talking about serving people that are medically fragile. If we had that support that could come into a shelter setting it would be huge, because right now you have shelter staff doing that type of care for people. It's individuals that are set up and have that benefit, but we can't get people to come into a shelter setting to provide that support. Things that if we had funding or were able to pursue funding, Chance would really look at programs that include supportive housing, expanding shelter capacity, which means space and staff, and looking at how do we provide safe spaces for different individuals. So someone in a mental health crisis that cannot be in a dorm setting, can we have a private space for them so that they are safe and inside for the evening? We would love to expand our crisis outreach, and I would love to have our family shelter offsite. That was a lot of information. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much. Couple questions. I don't know how to ask the question, but I think I'll get to it. Is there an awareness of other shelters in other cities and what openings they have and working with them? So let's just say, yes, maybe we're removing someone from Albany where this is where they want to be, but an option of, hey, there is 10 beds. I'm making something up right now, but there is 10 beds in Philomath shelter that doesn't exist. And seeing who can be moved to those spaces, functional, great spaces that have staff in smaller areas, smaller towns, or do you feel like there's just a flood coming to Albany and we're trying to just keep up, but there are, maybe 15, 20, 30 miles out, there's openings somewhere.
I think a lot of places are getting flooded. I get your question, and we will do that. One, we do it really carefully because Second Chance, and I'm assuming Helping Hands, has experienced other towns pulling up in county, city, medical, police vehicles and dropping people and leaving in our shelter parking lots. That happens often.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really mindful if we're trying to transition someone somewhere else. So things we'll do, there are people that end up here and they're like, hey, I'm from Portland, or hey, I'm from here. I have family over here. We're happy to help get you there. But what we're doing is we're either calling a shelter and ensuring there's a space open and they're going to hold a bed for that individual, or that there's family or a friend that will be there waiting for that person. And then we've paid for airplane tickets. We will pay for bus rides. We will help that person get where they need to be. We will drive them. We just want to ensure that on the other end, there's an agency or a family or friend support system that's going to catch that person. And it's not just going to be a drop in a parking lot or street.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. I'm not at all suggesting busing people out of Albany. I'm saying more of a collaborative way. Are there other people putting effort that have maybe, 5 to 10 beds open that we're unaware of that we can give access to people?
And we will. If we know there's a connection, we absolutely will do that. Or if it's something that will better serve that person, yes, we will have staff work through that process. Yeah.
Great.
Question.
Yeah.
You mentioned Samaritan Health assisting in a couple of instances. Do you have a sense of, and this may be outside your area of knowledge or willing to say, are they making a big financial commitment generally to this problem overall globally, or are they just kind of doing a minimal amount? Or do you have a sense of that?
Well, I don't know globally. I've got a good partnership with Samaritan and IHN, and I think they're doing some good work, and they're asking what's happening and what can we do different. But we need more medical support. But I think that Samaritan is engaging and asking the questions and listening and attempting to meet some of those needs in really creative ways.
Do you feel they could do more?
Well, I feel like we could all do more. There's a huge need out there.
Well, we're not all a billion-dollar corporation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but
Yeah, I think I'm just going to check and see it. I don't see Lauren here with Jackson Street. She is online. I do want to give her a chance to speak too. So thank you, Emma. And I will turn it over to Lauren.
Thank
and
you.
Hopefully we can I'm sure you'll have questions for Lauren. Let me know what those are and I'll ask her after the meeting, but I want to make sure we also get a chance to just talk about our priorities for next year. And that's the next thing after these agency consultations. So just let's hold the questions, but let me know what they are so I can ask Lauren.
And
outside
Mayor
of the meeting.
Johnson's going to have to step out.
I have to step out.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lauren. I'm turning it over to you now.
Perfect. Thanks all for fitting one more person in. I am the grants manager at Jackson Street Youth Services. We have kind of a full continuum of care. We offer outreach, shelter, and Next Steps is our transitional housing program. Outreach is for the full age range of youth that we serve, so 10 to 24 years old. And then shelter, we mostly focus on emergency shelter for 10 to 18-year-olds, so 10 to 17. Once you're 18, for licensing reasons, we can't have 18 and under 18 in the same shelter. And then Next Steps is for 18 to 24 years old, really focusing on transitional living. How do we help you go from homelessness to I am a secure, stable adult that can handle rent payments and getting a job and, you know, all the things that you maybe would have learned if you'd had a stable childhood growing up. We focus on providing safe and stable shelter, improving well-being, positive permanent connections, and education and employment supports across our whole continuum. Those are the four kind of core outcomes that the federal government has identified as, like, if you help youth experiencing homelessness with these four things, that's what will get them somewhere stable and secure as an outcome for their long-term life. That means meeting basic needs, shoes, food, hygiene supplies, etc. It means providing mental health counseling. We refer to a lot of partners for things that we don't actively provide ourselves. We work with, like, Young Roots has come up today as a name. They work with pregnant and parenting teens or young adults. So we work with them pretty closely if we have pregnant and parenting young adults in our population. We have 26 shelter spots over both counties. We work in Lynn and Benton County. 16 of those are in Albany. Average length of stay right now is about 5 weeks, and we are always at capacity in that facility. Sometimes that's capacity limited by the number of staff we have. If we have a full staff roster, we can have up to 16 youth in that shelter, and other times we're limited because we maybe don't have a staff member or 2 staff members, and so we're down to 10 beds, but they're always full. And then Next Steps is not emergency housing. It has a wait list. It has an application process. We have 15 units in Corvallis, 10 in Albany, more units on the way in both counties in the next 2 or 3 years. 6-month average length of stay. So we see about 52 young adults per year right now in that. We operate outreach out of a very tiny 900 square foot building in Albany, and are building a new facility closer to downtown Albany. It'll have things that we've talked about as a larger group of providers today, like showers and outreach supports in a larger range of services, laundry, etc., specifically for youth and young adults. And I think our biggest challenge right now, especially for young adults moving out of Next Steps, is there's nowhere for them to go. They're stable, they've got a job, they have the ability to pay rent. And we've been moving youth and young adults, well, specifically young adults, into Airbnbs. Some of them have ended up in single rooms with more roommates than there should be in that room, just because that's where they can go. That isn't this program anymore. Some have chosen to return to unsafe family, which they have more skills to handle that process, but still not an ideal situation. Probably our most ideal, not super ideal situation has been young adults who are renting single rooms from older people in the community who maybe have space, want a little bit of company. So they're sometimes providing kind of a subsidized elder care, but they at least have connection and a safe space to be. So our ideal would be to have more affordable housing and potentially build some stronger partnerships with landlords, maybe have some sort of landlord pool that's willing to offer an amount of supportive housing or rooms that they say, yes, we know you'll be working with these young adults as they're transitioning out and going through aftercare, and we want to hold these for your young adults. That's kind of one of our big dreams these days. Also looking for rental housing that is affordable and high quality, and ideally isn't single homes or studios. A lot of the youth that are moving out of Next Steps express that they want roommates, they want community. I think Councilor Dean also echoed this need for community around us that isn't just like, here's your tiny apartment and you're alone in life again. Isn't super supportive for any of us. And in general, if we had more funding, our dreams would be to expand the number of Lynn County units, which we're working on, but obviously more funding is always useful for construction projects. Infrastructure support, just in general, as we grow as an organization, you got to pay the bookkeeper, you got to pay the mental health counselor, positive youth development coordinator, some of that program support and admin staff needs to keep up. We're always looking for additional ways to pay all of our staff more, but sustainably. And then figuring out ways, candidly, Lynn County and Albany have been very supportive of Jackson Street, and finding ways to match that in both counties is one of our focuses right now. So figuring out how do we support both Albany residents and residents in Benton County, because realistically people move between the two, and so we're in both places. That's kind of the speed run of our notes and answers. Sounds like Beth will take questions for us, and I'm happy to provide whatever answers you need.
Yeah, I will follow up with any questions I hear from the commission after the meeting. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks all of everyone that did agency consultations. Thank you. Appreciate all the information that you guys have shared. It's been really valuable. So with that, I wanted to transition into considering whether or not there were any priorities that we wanted to highlight in our 2025 application and request for applications. Those would be related to what our priorities or goals were in our 5-year plan. In your agenda packet, I did include what our priorities and goals were that were in the 5-year plan for reference. We don't have to select specific priorities. We can say that these are all of equal priority, or you can opt to say this is of particular importance this year, and we'd like to give the applications that apply to this goal or priority a bit more weight. So that's up to the commission, and I'd love to hear input or guidance on that now.
Well, the thought I have on that is that maybe keep them all equal priority for now, because it depends on what the applications are and the opportunities that people see in making changes with their application, and that we react to that application rather than put more weight on one priority than another.
I guess it seems like we've heard some themes in these presentations we've had over the last couple months. And if we could identify some of those themes as maybe something that we would want to prioritize, that might be another way to think about it, that we could list some priorities to address some of the things that we're hearing. Like, for example, I know we've heard at least 3 times how senior populations seem to be one of the growing trends, right? So maybe trying to help people who are homeless or headed that way in that population, maybe that would be a trend that we would want to focus on for a year, since we've seen that as something being highlighted. So.
I'm just looking over the priorities, and I want you to re-ask your direct question too of what you're hoping to hear from us.
I'm hoping to hear if the commission wants to select priorities for next specific priorities that should be given more weight for the next application process, and if so, what those should be. And if not, then that makes it pretty easy. They're all equally important in the application process. So yeah.
Were you maybe envisioning, so there's 5?
I have no specific vision. I'm deferring to your guys' expertise. In years past, we've selected none, and we've also selected 2. You could select 1. I think at some point you think if you select maybe more than 2, you're kind of inching your way towards saying they're all of equal importance, because I think there's 5 priorities in our consolidated plan. That would be kind of my reflection on it, but there's nothing to say that you couldn't select more than 2.
You're talking about prioritizing 1 or 2 of these, not putting this list in a prioritized order.
Well, it would just be getting a few more points. Let's just say you've heard that addressing any programs or activities that address housing needs or homelessness needs or those needs related to seniors and families with children or something like that. They may just get a few more points. That doesn't mean that other applicants wouldn't receive funding. It's just if there's a lot of competition, it might cause applications that, are addressing the priorities you've determined. I just gave you an example, not suggesting that those be the ones necessarily, but it is, it's really hard for us to address housing needs, with these funds, but there are some activities. But, even with the public services dollars, you could try to prioritize those that address whatever you think you've heard the priority needs are related to, and then any of the other non-public service activities. We always work with potential applicants to help them come up with eligible activities that could be funded, especially outside of the public services pot of money, because it's not usually as competitive. But again, it really depends on, well, what applications are received. It might help just if you've got a lot of competition, help you make that decision. That's all.
I think I understand that helps.
Yeah, it could also, like, if there was an agency that was kind of like, we could apply for funds for this program, or we could apply for funds for this program, and we had stated this is our priority, they might choose to apply, for something more related to that. They may not. They may just have what they want to apply for, and they're going to do that regardless, and that's fine too. But that might be another way that it could shape the outcomes.
Yeah, if we were to decide, okay, this year we only want to fund the child care desert somehow, and that is how we want to tackle affordable housing.
You might get more applications.
We would specifically invite those to apply, and that would be our number 1 priority.
Yeah, and I would say I wouldn't recommend precluding other types of programs when we're prioritizing things. I think, like Ann mentioned, it's really just about maybe giving those applications a bit more weight, so that if it is really a competitive year for funding, that those might rise to the top, and because we want to align our funding with what our priorities are. But I don't think we want to say we're only doing this, because we want to still invite a good pool of applicants.
Well, in that sense, then everyone can have a thought and chime in, but in my opinion, it sounds like really keep it open for most people to feel like they can apply if they are in these categories of priorities. And then once we hear the applications, be able to decide what's going to be the most effective for those dollars.
I'm hearing a few people that are in favor of kind of equal weight for our priorities. And Commissioner Cole, you mentioned like might be a benefit to do it differently. Are there other, I'm trying to reach a consensus here. What are other thoughts?
I'm really torn because I see an advantage in that and starting on a kind of even slate, but also I don't want to ignore the agencies that are coming in and giving us clear message about transitional housing and low barrier entry is full up and those types of things too. And if those are the biggest needs, those are the biggest needs, and maybe we should. I think I'd be in favor of choosing those as priorities for a year and see if we can't make more of an impact.
Do we have time in the year for another discussion about this?
I'd like to get the application packet posted before our next CDC meeting. So it would be preferable to me and give applicants more time to do applications if we can come to a consensus today.
I think the challenge, sorry.
I would say I would also support, kind of leaving it open, but, maybe just a thought on moving the, increased affordable housing options, maybe like less weighted, not because it's not important, but we just have such a limited pool of funds that, it takes such a substantial amount to, make even a little bit of an impact, just so our dollars are, being utilized in the best possible way in helping the most people. Just my thoughts.
I think most of the people that were here today, there's a lot of overlap, of course, but I thought the greatest need that they were all talking about really was reducing homelessness. And if we went the direction of not keeping them all equal, I wouldn't have any problem with giving a little bit more weight to reducing homelessness.
Mhm. Commissioner Cole?
Oh, I was just thinking, I mean, what I was saying earlier is in principle, if we had a good understanding of what the needs were in the community and maybe got some of that from the agency discussions, that might want to bias us towards some areas, but I'm not sure we really have that understanding. And I think out of all the things we've heard, choosing which theme we would want to focus practically might be a really difficult thing for us. And so in lieu of that, if we made them all equal, which is reasonable, what we're really doing is saying, well, the agencies know what the needs are. So if we just open it up to these things, we'll take a look at what their requests are and trust that they are actually accurately seeing what the needs are in the area, and then kind of delegating that analysis, really.
I wonder if we as an agent, as a commission, can decide, or whether we should decide, where the most pain is in the community. Because there's obviously a lot of pain involved in the people that are needing and experiencing these issues and needing help. The one was particularly heartrending was, with an infant in a car, living in a car with an infant, and you think about what specifically can we what request can we grant that will ease that problem, because that seems like an especially powerful and poignant one. But that's what I wonder, if we don't have the time maybe for that discussion, as a philosophical discussion among all of us, to say how can we best push these priorities and give a little bit of weight to this one or that one in order to overall reduce the pain in our community, because that's what we're really seeing is there's a lot of discomfort and a lot of pain. And there's also, as I mentioned before, my question about Samaritan, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money in these community, and making sure that we get, of course, we're talking about CDBG, and I know that specifically is our focus, but other kinds of issues and funding sources and so forth do come into the program or come into the picture. But I just think that perhaps if we're going to increase some weight to any of these, it would be, and I noticed that the two priorities both include increased affordable housing options, the supporting affordable housing one and the reducing homelessness one, but supporting public services for low and middle income residents, that perhaps gives more immediate relief of people suffering. So I don't know, that's something that we have to think. Do we push more towards directly increasing aid to people that are hurting, or do we try to build this better environment for housing, which seems to be a pretty tough thing to do, to make it more affordable for people? So I don't know, that's just my 2 cents.
Commissioner Dean?
Yeah, I think I would add, there's a ton of different ways to minimize an affordable housing for our families. Yeah, my personal thought is for that situation, immediately and needing a lot of support to stay. Can you say
For the first priority is to support affordable housing in Albany, and that includes the goal is included in that, increase affordable housing options. The next one is to reduce homelessness, and that also includes a goal of increasing affordable housing options. So is it, we're saying that this is saying that increasing affordable housing options is going to address two different priorities of these five.
Yeah, I like the increased availability. A lot of our adults that are, there are so many things. Want to get them into shelter, absolutely.
Stop the bleeding.
I love that. Stop. We want to stop the bleeding. Shelters where that occurs, but there's a lot of work that needs to happen there. So we need capacity and staffing. Yeah, bloody murder and throwing things. Not stopping the bleeding. We're creating a problem. So affordable housing is needed, but I like that focus of reducing.
Here's my thought as well, is that, each agency is responsible for how they are serving and staying in their lane and offering their piece of the puzzle. And every year we're giving this money out in a certain amount. And each year, each agency is going to have a different piece of a need that they need to present. And sometimes they can find funding other places. Sometimes they are, maybe they got a certain amount of money somewhere else because we're just a small portion. And maybe they got a certain amount of money from a big donor targeting one of their big needs. And maybe they apply, with a, little $5,000 need that's maybe not a priority. Or that's where I feel like it's our job to receive and hear the needs that is being requested. And then it's our job to delegate where that money is to go appropriately. And we do this every single year. So that's where it's struggle for me of like pigeonholing it, because they do get money other places and their needs are changing and shifting all the time. Where are we going to put this little pot of money? And that's where we get to decide during applications. That's my last thought. Did you have a thought?
So it sounds to me, and correct me, of course, if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me that we're grappling with what would be the priority, and maybe it would be homelessness or maybe it would be services. But I think in this discussion, what it feels like to me is that we're identifying that we know that all of these are very important, and it's case by case, right? Different people have different needs, and so it's difficult for us to pinpoint this is the one that we want to give more weight to, because we don't want to preclude these other scenarios and these other needs. And so if that feels accurate to how we're feeling as a commission, I would say maybe it is appropriate to give them all equal weight, and let agencies demonstrate through their application why they're applying for that particular need and what they will fulfill. Does that sound reflective of the discussion?
I like that, yeah.
Yep, I agree.
And I would go ahead and just, do I have a motion to approve equal weighted priority that's listed?
I motion to approve equally
Do I
weighted.
have a second? Okay. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay, then the motion passes.
All right, so our last agenda item real quick is I just wanted to provide an update on the housing implementation plan. I know the commission had been interested in that previously, and so I wanted to come back and share where we're at. So we finished kind of our main core public engagement efforts in August and September with focus groups, office hours, and online survey. We took that public input that we received to City Council during their work session, and got more input from council and direction from them on kind of some of the detail questions related to the policies and code amendments, and addressing any concerns that they had or that came up in our public engagement. And so we'll return to council to bring our updated policy proposals on November 4th, and the code amendments will go to Planning Commission in December. So those strategies are moving forward, that plan's moving forward, and if you guys are interested in learning more about where it's at or providing comment on it in the future, November 4th, and then look for that December meeting. And I can, in November, give you the December meeting date. It's the 2nd. Sorry. Thank you.
Oh, actually, it's been moved out 2 weeks,
Wasn't
December 16th.
So December 16th, the Planning Commission, they will have a hearing, I believe, on the code amendments. So any questions on that before we move to the next piece?
Next piece is me.
All right. Is there any business from the public? Don't see anyone online. No one here. Any business from the commission?
So just real quick, one of the ways that we can, as citizen commissions, I believe, address these issues, other than just through our voice that we have for funding, is to make resolutions before the council. Specifically, I was not here last meeting, I'm sorry I missed it, but this idea of this camping situation being dispersed, and I don't know what the citizen feedback looked at like that, but I've seen a lot of citizen feedback to the negative of that. These folks are dispersed now, like all over the place, and they were centralized. Communities have a long history in providing places for people who cannot lay their head anywhere but a tent or a sleeping bag, a space to safely do that, collect the trash, some very basic services. And I think this was a step backwards. If the fellow commissioners agree, I propose that we draft a resolution and go before council and give them that feedback.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you are wanting to draft a resolution so that there's more conversation between council and the decision.
And I would ask the council to reconsider city resources and land for these folks to camp on. So they're not out in parks dispersed. So they're not out. They're a burden on law enforcement. They're a burden on the services people to try to go out and find them. It's a significant issue. And it seems like we've taken the very basic level of civic support we have for the very basic level of unhoused people and said, well, the federal government doesn't require us to do that anymore. So see ya. And away they went. And I'm not saying it was great down there, and maybe we didn't put enough resources and law enforcement or whatever the case may be. I did go down there a couple of times. But that's not the answer, just to send these people scattered. So
Can I ask? Yeah, I would just recommend that if you're going to write a letter to the council, you guys don't do resolutions. The council would have to pass a resolution. It's just ask the council to maybe appoint a homelessness task force or something. I mean, there are agencies, including the city, that meet regularly once a month to address some of these issues. And apparently, the Marvin's Garden situation became fairly unsafe, and staff at Chance and the city and Lynn County were not safe any longer. And apparently 84% of the residents there were actually not from Albany. So I think those are some of the issues, but what your point is really is not necessarily specific to Marvin's Gardens, but what are things the city can look into within the city's collective toolbox in helping get people out of the woods. I mean, it's expensive. It's hard for agencies. What's a plan for the community moving forward to continue to work on reducing the outdoor homelessness issue? That is really what it is. And
thank
the
you for-
council could, there's been task forces before in other cities, just where there's more of a direction or a request to please consider continue to work on this issue. And would they consider appointing a task force or something like that to develop a plan, partnerships, whatever that is?
I would move that Commissioner Davis perhaps draft a letter and present it at the next meeting. Let us hash it out a little bit. And if we all agree that such a thing would be appropriate for the council, then send that to the council. I will make such a motion now.
I would second that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that if the commission agrees. Yeah. Yes, we do.
Yeah, so I seconded it already. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
And this was for him to write a letter and then we would discuss the verbiage before sending it to council? Okay.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to a close at 1:30. Thank you for your extra time, everybody.
Thank you.